Hello guys, White Warlock here. Yesterday I showed you how the queen works and what items you want to get. And today, as I promised, I will show you a goldfish to see how you should play the red-blue items deck, uh, and like how you go through the first two turns and then continue into winning the game. Now obviously this is a goldfish, and as this deck has a lot of reactive cards, it will be a lot different than if you would actually play. So for playing, um, you don't see my hand, but I would recommend watching one of my videos to see how I go through playing the deck against an actual opponent. Like you see how I often prioritize dealing with my opponent's threats to keep their lore total as low as possible, and then go for the instant kill and setting up that instant kill. So I took a deck, randomized it, but I did take I did make my hand because I wanted to show what like a good hand game looks like, and this allows for great gold fishing to see a little bit how it works. So I picked an inkable, which is useful, and then some of these cards can be any card you want because they are going to be ink. So let's say the LeFou here. Because we have a queen and a shield, we don't need the LeFou anymore. So the LeFou will be our first ink, for example. Normally, this is obviously after mulliganing, but you normally this would be like a keep 6, mull 1. And against some matchups, it might just be a keep 7. Alright, we will be on the play. And as I said, we have a shield, so we do not lead the LeFou. So we will ink this LeFou, and we will pay one for a popsicle. Let's see what we draw. Alright, we draw another uninkable. Not great, but we will see what we can work with. Alright, we'll untap, draw for turn. Alright, we draw an inkable item that we don't really want to play. It's a great synergy with Sisu, but our turn 3 will be the queen, our turn 4 will be Hiram, and we won't really have an opportunity to play for the fun crossbow first and then be able to Sisu. And if we want to play these on the same turn, we will have to have 8 ink, and that's a little bit too much. But always draw before you have to ink. Because we only have 1-drops, we want to play the popsicle and the shield this turn, but that's not necessary right now. We, because we can play the popsicle first. Let's see if we draw worse than inkable. No. Because we're goldfishing, our Hiram won't die. So in a goldfish, you can just ink the Hiram because it won't add anything. But because we want to simulate a normal game, we are assuming that Hiram will die as soon as possible, and we want a second Hiram to continue drawing cards. So we'll ink the Fang Crossbow, and then we will play the Shield of Virtue to prepare for a turn 3 Queen and a turn 4 Queen, double Queen activation. Right, we'll untap, and we'll draw. So this is another uninkable. Now we are forced to ink the second Hiram, which is not too bad, but not ideal. And we will play the Queen. That's it. We can't do anything more. So we'll start our fourth turn. We'll draw a card. Alright, we draw a lucky dime. So now we have one inkable, and it's an inkable we really want to keep. So we will activate Queen. Let's see what we get from Queen. Get a shield, get a workshop, get a shield, get a Sisu. Okay, so because we are gonna use Queen again, we can do two things. We can either take the workshop because it's the best, basically the best start in our deck. Sometimes it's Fishbone Quill, depending on the matchup and how your hand looks. But if we do take the workshop and we untap Queen and we activate Queen again and we don't get an inkable item, then we need to ink Flavor Sham. I would take that risk because we still have another workshop. So on turn 4, instead of playing the Flavor Sham, we can play the workshop, draw a card from workshop, and then start drawing cards anyways without the Hiram. Will be sad, obviously, but I think that's worth it, the risk. And we just hope we get an inkable item that we will ink and not take for free with the Queen. All right, so we take the workshop. Again, it is relevant in some matchups to put the cards that you put on the bottom in a correct order. So we have to think, what do we need? What might we need? Do we need to answer a card? If we need to answer a card, and in the late game we probably have a crossbow, the last crossbow, or one or more ice blocks, probably. So I would put the Sisu on top and then put the 2 shields on the bottom. But you could argue that if you want only items and you already have workshop, maybe you could do the order like this: shield, Sisu, shield. But I would generally take answers on the top, unless you have like a dime or a Tamatoa, which you want first because you need that card to win the game. All right, let's put these on the bottom. And then we pay 3 to shield the queen, untap the queen, and activate the queen again. That's at the top 4. All right. So let's say one of these 4 cards was an inkable. We would always take the fishbone quill and play it for free. However, this time we could think about taking it and inking it instead. One thing that is curious for me is that because we have a workshop, we could start drawing cards and then we can fishbone quill more easily. And then we just activate queen twice again next turn or something and just do a little bit less. But I really like a Hiram. We have, especially because we have 2 popsicles, which are free targets. Popsicles are almost never used to remove damage because we aren't attacking much. Because the only thing that we are really attacking with is a Maui. The other cards that we use to deal with on our opponent's cards are Sisu and Medusa, and they don't take damage from dealing with their foes. So I would take the fishbone quill to hand, and I will ink the fishbone quill for turn. Then we will pass. So let's say if we had inkables before the second queen activation, because we got a workshop, I would have let's say there was an inkable, I would have inked this, then activated it, so that we would get a fishbone quill, then tap it and draw a card from workshop because we have 1 available ink left. But now we really just wanted the fishbone quill as the ink, and we didn't want to ink the Hiram. So let's say if we had 2 Hirams, then we could have done that, right? So this one is very easy, generally, for cards that we want to put on bottom. We need all the Tamatoas we can get, so Tamatoa always goes on top. And Maui is our worst answer thing. And Hiram draws 2 cards, so I would say we would put Tamatoa on top, Hiram in the middle, Maui on the bottom. Alright, so we inked our fishbone quill. We basically drew a card and played a Maurice workshop for 3 for the queen. So I think that's a good turn. Then we will go to our 5th turn. We will draw a Maui. In most matchups, this will just be the ink. In red purple, probably not. But we will see, because we can activate the queen first. 2, 3, 4. Alright, so we have 3 non-items and an item, so we don't have to choose. We get a Greystone Dragon. Because we already saw Tamatoa, we really want the other Tamatoa also on top to get as close as possible. And remember that we put a Hiram on the second, so if we play that Hiram, we will draw the third card, the Maui, and this Tamatoa. So Tamatoa on top and then the two brawls bottom. Alright, so we played the Greystone Dragon for free. Our What we want to do in the rest of our turn is play the Hiram, but we can ink one more card. So we can pay one from the workshop for free, basically, to draw a card, because we won't need that ink this turn. Alright, so we draw a Brawl. Generally, you keep the Brawl over the Maui. In red-purple, you might ink the Brawl instead of the Maui. But now we will ink the Maui, and we will play Hiram. The order of cards that you want to kill are like Popsicle first, Vitalisphere second, Shield third, Ice Block fourth, something like that. Sometimes you want to kill the Greystone Dragon because we don't have characters in our banish pile. So I will like in this obviously we are goldfishing, so none of our characters will ever die. So Greystone Dragon is literally useless. But in normal games, you want to keep the Greystone Dragon because a popsicle is also kind of useless. Uh, and a popsicle in the yard is also fine because we can get it with Tamatoa, and we don't need to sacrifice or banish our popsicle for nothing to get it to the yard to grab it with Tamatoa. So we will banish our popsicle and we will draw two cards. We draw another brawl and a workshop. So this means that we have our three workshops, two in hand, one on the field. So when we activate Queen, we should not expect another workshop because we don't have one anymore in the deck. Alright, let's untap. Right, we will draw a card for turn. We draw the second lucky dime. Very interesting. So normally in basically every match, your opponent has played something that can be killed by a Medusa. So normally you ink brawl and you play the Medusa. If you didn't have a Hiram, obviously, because now we just quest with Hiram and then we take the Popsicle. Because we want to draw cards generally before we activate Queen, so we have a little bit more information and then activate Queen. Because there are like very fringe cases where you do not quest with Hiram. Let's say you don't want to draw more cards because you're against a mill deck or you're against blue steel and they heavily signal you that they have that their only card in hand is a whole new world. You could not decide to quest and keep it safe. Let's say they have like a queen, sorry, a Tinkerbell and a Smee on board, or they have two Smees, then it just dies immediately, and then they sing Whole New World and it dies. And our cards that we drew are in the banish. That's a little bit bad value, so you don't have to quest. Otherwise, you could, if you have a shield, you could untap the Hiram with shield and keep it safe. So there are some cases where you don't want to quest, but in this scenario, we would like to quest first, destroy the popsicle, and draw two more cards. Right, so we get a queen and a fishbone quill. So because we are goldfishing and we are not planning on ever using these, you could just ink the brawl here, but to keep it a little bit more realistic, we are inking the queen. In later stage of the game, the chances that you ever activate the queen are very low, and spending 3 ink on a queen, well, you could be doing something else, like cleaning up your opponent's board, or playing a fishbone quill, or playing workshop, is a little bit unfortunate. So, yeah, I wouldn't. I would just ink the queen here and enjoy that we've had the queen. Because, but before, like you ink the queen, you could also activate the queen, obviously. And you have to think a little bit on what item I can get and if I want to pay one from the workshop. So the idea is for our turn is that we kind of want to play a fishbone quill to start our ramping. Because we got a Greystone Dragon from the queen target, but we don't have any characters in the yard, so we don't ramp from Greystone Dragon. So I normally like when I go through my turns, if I'm like 99% sure I want to play a card, I will keep ink like on the side for that card. This is obviously very telegraphing. So let's say you have a Tamatoa in hand and you put 8 on the side, and then you play cards and you draw cards and you see, oh, I don't want to play my Tamatoa. Your opponent knows you have a Tamatoa in hand. So you have to be very careful with that. But for me, it's just calculating, helps me calculate, and the advantage your opponent gets is not that high, especially in these turns where I would have to draw an insanely weird card not to just play the Fishbone Quill here. Actually, I don't think there's any card in this deck that I would play over the Fishbone Quill here, because even the card that I might want costs 6, and I will show you that when we draw it, because it's a new feature to my deck that I think could work very well. So we have to think, alright, if I play a Fishbone Quill for 3, I have 2 ink remaining, plus, let's say, the Queen, and plus the one I'm fishboning, right? So let's say we didn't have a Queen on board, then we would have played the Fishbone Quill, could have drawn a card from Workshop, then, well, we haven't inked this yet then, right? Then let's say we drew an ininkable, Queen is still the best ink, we ink the Queen, then we ink a card with Quill, and then we play Workshop. We don't draw cards, but that's fine, because we will start drawing cards later. However, we do have a Queen, right? So we want to see, do we want to activate Queen, draw a card, play Fishbone Quill, draw a card, and then we have 2 ink to do nothing. So I would say activate Queen first. But, yeah, sorry. Yeah, you draw a card, you Fishbone Quill, you draw a card, and then you have 2 ink, right? So yeah, I would say let's activate the Queen first and see what we can get. If we miss, that would make our life much easier, to be honest, but we don't. Okay, but those are very good hits. Like in a Goldfish, obviously the ice blocks are kind of useless, but normally in this, with this hand, this many cards in hand, and we have a Medusa, double brawl, and a Sisu, so we kind of want to get value for the Sisu, so getting a ice block is more important than getting Vitalosphere, except if you are playing against red purple. Vitalosphere is so insanely good against red purple that you want to have the Vitalosphere here if you're playing against red purple. But we are not, so we get the ice block. Now, if we were playing against an opponent with actual cards, yeah, playing against an opponent with actual cards, then sometimes we might want to brawl or sisu them. Uh, let's say they have a beast. Okay, so normally we would just Medusa them, but let's say we don't have this Medusa in hand. This is just a random card. We have the ice block here, but if we play it from Queen, it ends exerted. So if we take it to hand, we don't play it for free. What we can do is we can play a Fishbone Quill, ink a card with the ink a card normally, ink a card with Fishbone Quill, let's say the Marie's Workshop, play an ice block, and then ice block the beast and brawl the beast. Or Robin Hood, or any card like that. Or you could even, if they have a Diablo and you don't want to draw cards, let's say they have a tapped Diablo that you don't want to draw cards, you can, because in this line we don't draw any cards from Workshop, right? We can ice block and Sisu the Diablo, and then have an invasive for later. Maybe if we draw a Vitalosphere or something, we can kill another Diablo if they tap it, or perhaps if they have like a if we have another ice block, we can ice block twice and attack the Diablo twice with C2 through the shield. Alright, but we are not doing that because our opponent hasn't played any cards. So we are just playing the ice block exerted. So now we can decide, do you want to draw a card from workshop? Again, we want to play the fishbone quill. So we have 2 open. That will become 3, and the fishbone quill becomes 4. The fishbone quill activation becomes 4. Again, our plan was to play a fishbone quill and a workshop. Doesn't matter when we draw a card, we just want to draw a card. And because we want to draw a card, because we can draw a card before we decide what to ink, we want to draw a card first. So we will draw a card from the ice block from the queen activation. Alright, we draw an uninkable Sisu. Alright. So in this case, I would say we would still ink the queen. For 3, we would play the fishbone quill. We will not draw a card with workshop. Instead, we will use the fishbone quill. And in this situation, you can ink any of these cards. I would keep the inkables because we don't have many inkables left. And the worst of our removal package is the Sisu because we only have 1 ice block, so we can only kill things that cost 2 or that have an attack of 2, but we already have brawls and the Medusa. So I would tend to ink the Sisu here with the fishbone quill. And then we will play a workshop. And we do not have enough ink to draw cards, but that's fine. Alright, that was our turn. Let's go to the next one. Untap. And draw. Alright, we draw one of our finishers, and you see here we have Tamatoa and double lucky dime. So right now we have 6 items. We have 7 ink. We can go to 9 through inking a card for turn and with fishbone quill. That would mean that we could play a lucky dime for 7 and draw a card from the ink, activate queen and draw another card, or we could just draw 2 cards from the lucky dime, right? Or we could just draw 2 cards from the queen activation. That will be like that will probably be our turn. Again, if you're playing a real game, this turn will probably be reactive, and you just wait until you finally find the time you can play a dime, and you keep the Tamto in hand until you can one-shot. Because we have double dime, the idea is mostly that we try to play these dimes as soon as possible, given the chance. If our opponent doesn't threaten a lot or doesn't threaten a wheel, and then we want to play a Tamatoa. If Tamatoa doesn't win on the spot, the Sisu probably will after the Tamatoa gets killed. So that's what we normally want to do. Again, we have 2 brawls that are great ink targets. That are great inks here for Goldfish, but they are good cards to keep in hand generally because they're easy removal and we already have an ice block. So we might want to start first with drawing cards with Hiram. It's always good generally to start your turn with questing with Hiram. Alright, so we quested once already before, so now we quest with Hiram and we go to 2 lore. And in this case, let's say this was the game state, your opponent hasn't killed your Hiram or the queen. You're thinking that it's gonna take a while for this Greystone Dragon to ever activate. Let's just kill the Ice Greystone Dragon. The shield has some use with queen or to protect my characters, and Ice Block is good with the cards we have in hand. So we will just kill the Greystone Dragon and draw 2 cards. Alright, we will draw another Greystone Dragon and a queen. Alright, we now have time to activate the queen to see what we want to get. So we can prepare for the double dime. We get a scuttle, another scuttle, a fishbone quill, and another fishbone quill. Well, there's literally no decision. We have to take a fishbone quill, and there's no reason not to play it for free. In this situation, uh, for putting the cards on the top, we want yeah, normally you want like scuttles to search for dimes. If you had to put a dime on the bottom, for example, we already have 2 dimes. So this probably won't ever matter. But I generally want to put the cards that search for items above the items itself, because at that point you'll probably have enough ink to play the scuttle to have a character and get the item. But let's say if it was a popsicle, I would have probably put the popsicle on top. It kind of depends on which item you would have and what you want from the scuttle. You could also put the fishbone quill here, but let's say we have a Hiram on board and we draw a double scuttle. That's better than drawing scuttle and a fishbone quill most of the time, at least. Let's put these on the bottom. Now we have 7 ink, and again we can go to 9. So we can start drawing 1 card to see if we want better ink. Fang Crossbow is not better ink than the Queen is. And we can draw 1 more card and play, and we get a scuttle. Alright. So here, the same goes. We will never have enough time with our game plan to play a Queen and wait a turn and activate it. So I would ink a Queen here. And then with the Fishbone Quill, I would generally want to keep these reactive cards here. I would keep a Marie's Workshop for if they somehow kill these 2 or they kill the Hiram or the Queen. And we have enough inkables because we want to ink the Scuttle next turn that we can just ink an inkable Greystone Dragon because we see that our opponent isn't killing our characters, so Greystone Dragon will probably not be of use, and we have better 3-cost items to play. And now, if we are given the opportunity, let's say our opponent breaks or our opponent doesn't really play any threatening characters, we can afford to play our first dime. Right. We do not have enough ink to draw cards from the workshops, but that's fine. We did draw enough cards and we have enough cards in hand to continue the game. Let's take our next turn. Let's untap. Let's draw a card. Alright, that's a Hiram. Again, we would like to keep that in our hand as long as possible, just in the case that our current Hiram dies. Now, on these turns, we have to start calculating. So if we were to spend 8 ink on a Tamatoa, we could get to 3 by a regular ink, and sorry, you can get to 4 available card ink because we have 2 Fishbone Quill now. So we can ink 1, go to 2 available ink 2 more with Fishbone Quill, go to 4 available ink. So what can we do with those 4? We can activate a dime and we can draw 2 cards after we used the Queen, for example. Alright, so in this case, if we had a second Tamatoa, we could play the Tamatoa and then activate dime and we would gain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, go to 10. And then let's say you quest with Hiram, you go to 11. And then maybe you can even quest with Queen, go to 12. And then next, like, they have to spend the time to kill the Tamatoa or they just lose. Then they kill the Tamatoa, you have another Tamatoa in hand, you play the Tamatoa, you dime the Tamatoa, and you win. So that would be a case where you would quest with your Queen instead of activating it, which almost never happens, but this was a good case if we had another Tamatoa, but we do not. However, we do have another dime. So let's see. So right now we have 7 items. We will probably make that 8 by a Queen activation. If we play a dime, we will have 9. Double dime activation would be 18 plus the 2 from the normal Tamatoa, is already 20. So we have lethal next turn if we play a dime and we have enough ink to play Tamatoa and activate double dime. Can we do that? So we have 7 ink here for the dime, and then we have 2 ink remaining. And with that 2 ink, we want to draw cards. Why? We want to draw more Tamatoas. If, let's say, uh, you had to discard them because you have less cards in hand. Not obviously, this is not the case in this hand. Or because you want to have ink, so you can ink 3 cards this turn and 3 cards next turn. Because right now we have 7 and 8 and 9 ink. Let's just do the inking now. Normally you can wait until you draw, but that's obviously not relevant here because we have enough cards. We will ink Scuttle, and we will start inking the workshop. And let's ink a Brawl. Right now, the workshop will probably not be necessary anymore with how many cards we have in hand and the fact that we are now in the ballpark of threatening lethal. And Scuttle, we are not planning to play again, and we have a second Brawl, so that is okay. So these are our 3 inks. So now we have 12 ink. All right, so we have enough to play for 7 a lucky dime. So normally, because we have 2 workshops, you can wait with the inking, pay 2 for the workshops to draw 2 cards. But right now we've already inked because we're playing a goldfish. But then you have to try to wait and ink as late as possible to allow, for as much information as possible, so you don't make any mistakes. So let's say we would be at 0. I always want to try to get 20 lore or close as possible because those are representative of on the draw games where you spend your whole game reacting and you can play a few items from the queen but the rest of the game you had to react. Let's say Hiram never survived. We couldn't quest with Hiram. Right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 items. Tamatoa would be 9. Would quest for 9, right? So that would be 18. If we play, right now we have 3 remaining ink. The only thing we can do with those 3 remaining inks is play a Brawl or Fang Crossbow. We are goldfishing, so Brawl doesn't do anything. But we can still activate the queen, obviously. So right now, next turn, we have guaranteed lethal. Let's say last turn they finally killed our Hiram and our queen. We will just play a crossbow to guarantee lethal next turn. And then let's say we untap, we draw a card, we get a popsicle, so we would have had another item anyways. But now we have 9 items, we have double dimes, we can spend 8 to play our Tamatoa, and we can spend 4 to activate dime twice and gain exactly 20 lore. Alright, so that was our game. You can see a little bit how you would play if your opponent does literally nothing, but obviously that's not how it works. So if you want to see actual gameplay, I have a lot of videos where I play against other people from the 20 Lore Pro Discord. They are very good players, so it's a good representation of what you will face in tournaments like the Challenges or the Store Championships. And you can kind of see how the deck actually works with how you have to play the reactive cards. I hope that this video was helpful to you guys. My next video will probably be explaining the deck and every card in the deck and what they do. I hope you'll check that one out when I post it. Thank you guys for watching, and good luck in your games.